In episode 33, titled Quick Recap, Privacy and Attachments, we take a rapid but thorough pass across the privacy artifacts and core attachments that give a System Security Plan, SSP, its backbone. Think of this as the executive walkthrough you deliver before a review board. What exists, why it exists, where it lives, and how it proves itself under scrutiny. The point is clarity and currency. Clarity means each artifact tells a plain story about purpose, scope, controls, and evidence. Currency means versions, owners, and dates are recent enough to trust. When these attachments are concise, consistent, and cross-referenced, assessors stop chasing contradictions and start sampling proof. That is how you trade anxiety for assurance and keep privacy real rather than performative. A privacy threshold analysis, PTA, answers the first gate question: do we need deeper privacy assessment or not? It catalogs data elements collected and derived, the sources and methods of collection, and whether personally identifiable information, sensitive personally identifiable information, or protected health information touch the system. It records legal authority, storage locations, retention periods, and sharing partners at a level sufficient for a reasoned decision. If the analysis finds material privacy exposure, it documents the justification for proceeding to a fuller study. If it does not, it records why not, who approved, and when a recheck is required. A good PTA is crisp and repeatable, so new features and datasets can be triaged quickly without inventing the process anew each time. A privacy impact assessment, PIA, is the narrative that follows when the PTA says go deeper. It explains the purpose of collection, the compatible uses tied to that purpose, and the life cycle of data through collection, processing, storage, sharing, and disposal. It shows data minimization choices, consent and notice mechanisms, and user rights where applicable, linking each promise to an interface or workflow. It details access controls and least privilege, transparency through auditing and accountability, and breach notification practices framed to relevant jurisdictions. It closes with residual risks and remediation milestones backed by owners and dates. The best PIA reads like an engineering document that lawyers respect and a legal document that engineers can implement. Rules of Behavior, ROB, turn policy into user-facing commitments before access is granted. They state responsibilities for acceptable use, prohibited actions, and monitoring expectations in language that working professionals can follow without translation. They name who must sign: employees, contractors, vendors, and especially privileged administrators. And they emphasize unique accounts, multi-factor authentication, MFA, and credential safeguarding. They specify how sensitive data is handled, where it may be stored, and how incidents must be reported. Electronic acknowledgments with renewal reminders, version tracking, and pre-access checks make the compact enforceable. When ROB statements are current and acknowledged, culture aligns with control, and investigations start from a place of shared expectations instead of surprise. Asset and software inventories are the anchor for scanning, patching, and traceability. Reliable inventories enumerate hosts, containers, managed services, and serverless functions, then attach owners, environments, criticality, and tags that drive policy. Software entries carry versions, publishers, license details, deployment methods, and provenance so you know what you are running and where it came from. Automation pulls from cloud application programming interfaces, APIs, configuration management, and orchestration layers to keep coverage high and drift low. Done well, the inventory becomes the routing fabric for vulnerability management and baseline checks. Find it, tag it, track it. Without this map, everything else is guesswork, and guesswork is where risk hides. The Control Summary Table, CST, condenses control narratives into a single, testable picture. Each row names the control identifier, responsible party, implementation status, inheritance or sharing details, planned assessment method, examine, interview, or test, and direct pointers to evidence. Partial implementations include remediation milestones with owners and due dates, and implemented never appears without a proof link. Standardized status flags call out blockers and dependencies in plain terms. Alignment with SSP text and parameter registers keeps terminology and values consistent, so a reader can move from table to narrative and back without translation. A current, honest CST turns audits into verification rather than discovery. Digital identity alignment strengthens the program where most breaches begin: access. Modern guidance emphasizes identity proofing, phishing-resistant authentication where feasible, federation with trusted providers, session governance, and clean lifecycle management. Assurance levels tie to risk, not convenience. And administrative paths never get weaker controls than user paths. Conditional access at the identity provider centralizes policy, while application gates enforce it locally. When identity artifacts, configuration exports, policies, and logs are part of the attachment set, you prove that who gets in, how they authenticate, what they can do, and how long sessions last are deliberate choices, not defaults that drifted into existence. FIPS, validated cryptography, protects data in transit and at rest by anchoring claims to tested modules, specific versions, and documented modes. Attachments should list each cryptographic module with certificate identifiers, approved algorithms in use, operating environments, and configuration exports that show transport layer security, TLS, key sizes, and disallowed options. Key management evidence, policies, rotation events, and hardware security module, HSM, or key management service, KMS, logs turns re-encrypt into we encrypt with this module in this mode measured on these dates. When reviewers can trace cryptography from claim to certificate to configuration, confidence rises and ambiguity falls. Interconnection agreements define how trust crosses organizational boundaries. They specify purpose, permitted data elements, protections for transit and rest, incident contacts, change notification expectations, and termination procedures that include credential rotation, root revocation, and data return or destruction. In a shared responsibility world, these documents prevent fog at precisely the moment clarity is needed. The attachments should point to signed agreements, current contact rosters, and monitoring hooks that verify obligations are being met. That way, our provider handles it becomes a statement with evidence rather than a hope with a logo. Configuration, incident, and contingency plans round out the operational spine of the package. Configuration management artifacts show roles, workflows, baselines, and rollback planning so changes are controlled and reversible. Incident response materials define severity levels, triage states, containment options, communications, and exercise schedules that turn intent into muscle memory. Contingency planning captures recovery time objective, RTO, recovery point objective, RPO, maximum outage, backup strategy, failover patterns, and restoration tests that prove continuity is feasible. Together, these attachments connect promises to playbooks and playbooks to proof, so the system is manageable not just on calm days, but on consequential ones. Common watchouts repeat across programs and are preventable with discipline. Mismatched versions, the SSP says one thing, the CST another, and the parameter register a third, erode trust quickly. Unclear owners appear as team names instead of accountable roles and make follow-through fragile. Poor evidence mapping forces reviewers into scavenger hunts, turning simple questions into multi-day delays. The antidotes are simple: single sources of truth, role mapping that resolves to people with authority, and evidence packs that sit next to the claims they support. When these are in place, accuracy stops being a heroic act and becomes the path of least resistance. Quick wins keep momentum high. Checklists standardize recurring steps so that new features always trigger PTA updates, ROB acknowledgements, inventory entries, and CST changes. Templates compress drafting time while improving clarity, especially for interconnection agreements and plan sections that repeat structure with different details. Recurring review cadences, light quarterly passes, and deeper annual updates keep everything current without turning maintenance into a permanent crisis. These small mechanisms, applied consistently, compound into a program that feels faster and looks more rigorous with each cycle. Now, bring urgency into view by articulating your top 3 gaps that demand immediate attention. Consider which artifacts are out of date, which controls claim implemented without traceable proof, and where ownership is ambiguous or unassigned. Say them aloud in operational terms. Pair each with a named owner and a measurable finish line, and record them where the rest of the team can see progress. This simple act converts a diffuse sense of risk into a short, actionable cue that leadership can fund and teams can close. It also sets the tone for continuous improvement rather than periodic fire drills. To wrap, This recap ties privacy artifacts and required attachments into one coherent picture: a privacy threshold analysis, PTA, that decides depth, a privacy impact assessment, PIA, that explains risks and mitigations, rules of behavior, ROB, that set user expectations, inventories that anchor traceability, a control summary table, CST, that reports status, identity alignment that governs access, FIPS validated cryptography that protects data, interconnection agreements that manage trust, and operational plans that make recovery and response real. The next action is timely and tangible. Update your attachments tracker with current versions, owners, dates, and links to evidence packs. Then circulate the summary for peer review. When the tracker is truthful and visible, the program stops drifting and starts delivering proof on demand. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.